You see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, I've got the investment prospectus for city as platform. This is a good platform piece right here because this talks about
Have
it.
you got either of the PDFs?
I'm getting into the mural right now. Did you say that it was in the mural? The child of city? I know that the platform is city is.
We're both in there yet. If you go to this one.
Oh, there it is. I didn't get.
Yeah, go through this one.
No, that's city
it.
as
No,
platform. Okay.
Yeah, you're right. Go back to the other one.
This one is the same.
No, I got no, it isn't.
Oh, child friendly. Oh, that's what I read then.
Yeah. And then go down to like page 16 or whatever. There's a couple of diagrams. Just keep going.
I'm going.
Okay.
It's going
Just
slow.
saying.
It's going slow.
Grab the slider.
It's the log of the data
Through it
that's
already?
up right now.
Went through it already? No, it's gone through it. No, no.
16, you said, correct?
No.
What?
I said 5 or 6.
Now is that?
Must be past here though. Past here, keep going down. There's a graphic, just keep going down till we hit the graphic. Do you remember the graphics? When you said you read it.
No,
No.
I only got halfway through.
Maybe it's in the other one then. Okay, go to the other one.
The other one is what I got
Go to the other one.
through. Get a real lag in.
Go down.
Let's see if anybody's in here yet.
And this
Okay. 9. Tim is here.
good. Amen. 9 of 13.
Should we
9
be
of-
facing the
9
room?
of 13.
I heard it. I'm trying to find it. Okay, I got a lag here.
It's all right. There
Okay.
it is. Okay. Yeah, let him in.
Okay. Okay, I'm going into just back to not screen share.
Hey, good morning.
Hi, Tim.
Morning, Tim.
What a crazy week, huh? On the one hand, it was pretty exciting to see the Georgian Senate results. And then, of course, mass chaos and rioting broke out at the U.S. Capitol yesterday. It's a really crazy time. Just when you thought things couldn't get any crazier in national politics.
Hey, you stole my line.
That's too funny.
Yeah, really. With that in mind, I'm wondering what we take away from that as we think about, the future unfolding and so forth and so on. I'm sure there's something from both of those elements in terms of the Georgia proposition and the value that brings to the Biden effort.
Yeah.
And how we might, track some of that gives us some insight and so forth in developing a platform.
Well, that's a great question. I mean, it's always hard to predict politics, but I think it's certainly only gotten much more difficult to predict things in recent years with so many unexpected and really pretty crazy things happening, obviously. But certainly having a I hesitate to call it a majority, but control of the Senate, because it's 50-50 with the tiebreaker being cast by Kamala Harris, certainly is a plus. I mean, certainly that means that if Democrats are united on an issue and it's a budgetary issue, they can pass it. The challenge is with non-budgetary issues and the 60 votes that are required to bring an issue to a vote. There's been some talk about Democrats voting to get rid of that filibuster rule, but at least one senator who's a Democrat has said that he's not going to vote to get rid of that rule. There may be others as well. So I don't want expectations to be too high about what the Biden administration will achieve, because with the filibuster rule and with the fact that they can't lose a single Democratic vote, I think their work's going to be cut out for them. And, obviously, I think the events of this week, like no other, have shown just how polarized our country is, which continues to be a really disturbing dynamic. I mean, people can't even agree on basic facts anymore. So, that's going to be an ongoing concern. If an optimist might say, and I think it's too early to know if this is true, but an optimist might say, well, maybe yesterday was the catalyst that we needed to get Republicans to distance themselves from Trump in terms of elected Republicans, and to jar not all of Trump's supporters, but some of Trump's supporters, or some Republicans who maybe voted for Trump but are sort of on the fence or persuadable. Maybe yesterday was what we needed to kind of jar them back to reality. And maybe that's true. I think it's too early to say. I mean, there have been so many moments in Trump's political career where people said, oh, this is the moment, whether it was him making fun of John McCain or making fun of a disabled person, or the video about the vulgar comments, so there have been so many instances of that I hesitate to say, oh, this is the time, because we've been burned so many other times. But we'll see.
Well, but he did fail to show up. He said he'd be there and he wasn't. So I think there's something about the betrayal that represents. But even the context of authoritarianism overall might be an interesting proposition too.
Right. So I don't know. It's I suppose to again, to be an optimist about it, one could argue, I think, and there's something to be said for this, that if in fact the peaceful transition to Joe Biden goes forward on January 20th, and I think it will, that there's something to be said for our system, that it could withstand a lunatic like Donald Trump being president. And I suppose I think this is largely true, that because of the decentralized nature of power in the country and the three branches of government and checks and balances, that has helped our system survive Donald Trump. And so maybe the framers were onto something when they structured the government the way they did.
So we have some bottom-up possibilities as well.
Yeah.
That we could focus on. And then I just came across a couple yesterday that go to.
Hey, Robert, I just noticed that you're on the call too.
Good morning, everybody. Happy New Year to y'all.
Good morning. Happy New Year.
New Year. We were just going over the craziness of yesterday and what that means for us here in Pontiac.
I mean, it's not. I mean, it's obviously troubling and disturbing, but it's not altogether shocking. I mean, we know that, we're talking about people who plotted to kidnap our governor, who talked about kidnapping the governor of Pennsylvania at one point. I mean, Trump has a lot of lunatics, people who really are unhinged, who are backing him. And of course, he himself is unhinged and he's inciting a lot of this. And so it really isn't shocking that yesterday happened. I mean, it's disturbing and it's jarring, but I mean, it's predictable on some level. I think the most disturbing thing isn't that they tried to get into the Capitol, but that the Capitol Police were so ill prepared that they were able to get into the Capitol.
I have this image burned in my mind of the, lone guy with the club, the security guard, and he's being mob rushed and
Right.
he has no backup. And this had been happening for
Right.
like 2 hours. We were 2 hours watching it. Like,
Exactly. I don't know why, again, and I'm no expert on security. So, but having said that, I mean, I think about, and this, there's a lot to be said here about the racism in the country and the racist disparities in the country. But obviously, if it were Black people storming the Capitol or Muslims storming the Capitol, I think the response would have been much more severe and violent on the part of Capitol Police.
he removed them for a photo op.
Yeah, well, exactly. And but I do wonder, why didn't they have more police there? I realize that there's an issue with National Guard and the military, perhaps because it's under Trump's command in some sense, or there's certain protocols that have to be followed. But there are thousands of Washington, D.C. police officers. Why weren't they mobilized to help guard the Capitol? And why wasn't everybody, Capitol Police and Washington, D.C. police, properly equipped in riot gear from the start?
But I'm not sure anybody anticipated being sent down from the Capitol to the Congress.
Right.
That's a big surprise, is that Donald pushed that button.
Yeah.
I'm sure they all had in mind that he would be leading the parade.
Yeah, good point. Actually, it's a good point.
And I don't know where Bill is, but can you get?
Yeah, and my 10 a.m. Zoom meeting has been changed to an in-person meeting, so I've only got until about 9:30 when I'll have to get on the road. So
Let's talk about the letter. What your feeling is that it was not mentioned, that January 4th wasn't mentioned in the council meeting.
Well,
January 4th was not.
Yeah, I guess I'm not shocked. I mean, I think the mayor in her office, despite what I said in my letter, surely you would never agree to something this foolish. I think they were aware of this. I don't think, I don't think the mayor is necessarily an astute legal person, but I have to imagine that the city's law firm or Matt Gibb or both of them identified this and decided to move ahead anyway. And, I don't think it's any secret that Matt Gibb is very tight with Bob Wan. And, who knows? There's been a lot of speculation that Matt Gibb may have some sort of financial interest in the deal moving forward. So I think, I wasn't shocked that the mayor didn't bring it up. I was a little disappointed that council's people or some council people didn't bring it up. So that's a little bit troubling, but of course, 4 of the council people voted for it. So they're probably in no rush to say, oh, we voted for a terrible thing. And does a Gloria Miller or a Randy Carter even really understand what I'm really driving at here? Who knows? I mean, I think Kermit does, but Kermit has often been a little bit timid on council in terms of asserting himself for whatever reason. And so I'm not surprised that he didn't really go after them about it. I think the real question is, how do we move forward at this point, and what do we do? Oh, you had also asked about the January 4th date. The mayor, even back in December on her Zoom explanation of this deal, sort of, I think, slipped up a little bit. And Ari was talking about a February 3rd deadline or February 4th, whatever it is. And I think that's because they assumed, or had early notice anyway, that this was not going to happen by January 4th. And they were already planning on that. So my guess is that didn't come up at the meeting because nobody was really surprised that, oh, January 4th is not the real deadline. Now, the interesting thing though is that, well, it's the way the agreements are written, it's Bob Wan's outfit, the buyer, the Dearborn Capital, that has the right to exercise those extensions. And so I guess I'm thinking out loud here about whether the council had to vote on those extensions legally. And of course, the mayor often does things without doing it the proper legal way and without getting city approval. But I guess you could argue that they don't have to vote on that because they voted on an agreement that gives Dearborn Capital the right to extend it. And so that probably is that. So I guess there was probably nothing untoward in terms of not having a vote on it.
Actually, they didn't vote on that. What they voted on and what they allowed to take place was the one pager, because that's all they had in front of them. The secondary materials didn't come till later. And so one could assume that, well, that just is a vote for those secondary considerations, but they're really not, because they were never put forth to any of the city council members to vote on.
Well, how do we know that?
Because that's the way it happened. Because it happened, they didn't happen simultaneously. They happened in a sequential.
Well, I agree that there was one vote at one city council meeting on the city buying Ottawa Towers from the Stevens family. And then I agree that the later vote about selling the Ottawa Towers to Dearborn Capital happened at a different meeting.
They voted for the mayor to go ahead and sign on behalf of the one pager. That's what they voted on.
Well, I just don't understand what's the one pager that.
That was the one pager agreement that was put forth as an addendum to the proposition, because there was no agreement in writing.
Well, but a lot of this happened in closed session. So I'm wondering, how do we know what they knew and didn't know? It seems hard to know.
Presented at city council.
What was that?
That was the one pager was what was presented at city council.
Well, in the public meeting.
In the public meeting when they voted, because they hadn't voted. There was no closed session vote.
Well, I agree you can't vote in closed session. I think there's sort of well, it's an interesting question. I assumed that they had seen these documents in closed session or had access to these documents in closed session, but then that wasn't done. The documents weren't provided publicly until after the fact because basically because the mayor has been obviously not transparent about this whole thing.
They had a one page, which was an addendum, which was a letter that was emailed to Matt Gibb. And all it pointed out was the importance of having something like a library idea on behalf of the community because of the opportunity zone connection. In other words, you can't have an opportunity zone connection unless you're doing something on behalf of the community.
Sure.
And more recently, as of December of 2019, you can't have a real estate investment, clearly, significantly, the only thing that's taking place.
Right. Well, that's interesting. So I think I know the one page thing you're talking about, which is the letter. I think it's basically a letter from Dearborn Capital, from Brian Locke of Dearborn Capital, I think, to the mayor. And so you're saying that the council agreed to give the mayor the authority basically to sign whatever she wanted because they didn't see what she was going to sign.
Correct. And they weren't even interested. Let's just get this done.
Yeah.
The transaction in a financial sense in their serving on the city council. And let's hurry and get this done. Just because it's confusing and complex and it doesn't mean anything anyways. I mean, the city isn't going to get valued in terms of the community from this transaction in any fashion. Why Kermit doesn't like it at all. And the truth is it should be the cornerstone for the development proposition.
Well, that's right. I mean, I mean, I'm laughing instead of crying because it's really sad and pathetic that city council just decided, hey, we want this off our plate. We'll
Right.
rubber stamp whatever the mayor wants to do. But I think you're basically right about that, sadly. I mean, I think that's right.
So I also think that the thing that we're witnessing without any mention is that the deal's really weak. It's beyond even our test of a weakness, okay?
Well, yeah, there are lots of other problems with it as well. Absolutely.
If that were a valid offer, there would be no question about the deal's done.
Right.
And it isn't, and it's because they're out there syndicating it right now. And
That's exactly right.
they're gonna get off over the goal line. But I doubt that the goal line is going to be approachable on their behalf because they don't even have an understanding of opportunity zone funding. They think it's about money and real estate, and it's not.
Right. Right.
They clarified that and had to clarify that. That's what the rulings in December are all about. So I think they might be surprised at how little of a return they might find in syndicating.
Yeah.
So other than that, I don't have a comment, but I think we should be thinking about that as a fashionable way of creating diversity in terms of approaches
Right.
from a financial point of view, which I think is a real weakness for the mayor.
Totally agree.
And our community is that viable option. And I for the life of me, can't understand why that wouldn't put some real focus and light on elements that are more significant to a 21st century execution than a more traditional bureaucratic orchestration.
Yep. Well, I think you're 100% right about all of this. And, in terms of what we can do, I wonder, it seems to me that there's more we can do. I mean, certainly my email's out there and, I've sent it to some people and they've circulated it, but it seems like there's more we can do to make the community aware of just what a rotten arrangement this whole thing is.
Yes.
So we're sending out a newsletter, which is kind of our review, something we do on a yearly basis at the end of the year. And we kind of held it to get through some of this and see, what and how we might frame it in such a fashion. And we're going to include your letter in it if you don't mind.
Absolutely, that'd be great.
It'll go out to some 700 people and of various efforts across the education in the city and of course the community most importantly. And we'll see what that gins up. And if it gets any response, we'll see if we can't steer it towards the kind of things that we're discussing. And I put a couple of documents that I read more deeply last night on the website, on the mural, and they're highlighted in red. And one of them is about community platforms and city platforms and digital and all of that. And then the other one is about
Share, right?
and kids and the right that they have to a city that's not often recognized. So I'm using that as a vehicle because I think it's so important. I mean, we always talk about kids being the future, and of course that's the point, but they have no voice in their city, and they need a voice in their city. This is the future of the city. I mean, this is so simple.
Yep.
That you can get lost sometimes in its simplicity, but really I think it's at the core of something meaningful taking place in terms of community engagement. So Monica's just, rolling through here some of the things that were in this document, but these aren't extensive documents. I think one is 30 pages and one is 16 pages. So,
Do you want me to show the chart, the graph?
yeah, if you can show the graphic, that would be great.
Is it possible for you to email me those documents?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, that'd be great.
We can do that. And this is one of the, top-down, bottom-up kinds of demonstrations within the context of the one about platform cities. And platform cities are taking a real hit. I mean, they're all around the world, being investigated, and probably the most local one is the one in Toronto that took place with Google and all the money in the world. and the city of Toronto, and because of security, I mean, platform always gets the bad end of the stick when you start talking about technology and the ability to control people with technology and then the use of their data and so forth and so on. So here was Google doing Toronto and Alphabet, all the money in the world doing and making this outrageous case for 12 acres on the city waterfront. And because of security, it died. Represented was so well examined, and Google, with all its money, just decided it wasn't worth the price that they were going to be paying. So they're on to bigger and better things in other places. But I think that's insightful, and I think that the worm is turned in terms of security. I mean, security can be really a bad thing if it's used badly, but it also can be something very good for a city if it's used correctly. And I think this is this particular document is an example of it being used correctly. And because it's inclusive, and because our community, for want of a model, has come to use their phones in such a dynamic social media, they just need to be connected to things that value their connection. And I think in this case, this is a really dramatic case, but I think being in the top tier of counties in the country, we have talent and we have the expertise and such and so forth to make this happen. And we have a community that could be so well served by that taking place.
Yep.
We have to examine it a bit and see if there's anything there that makes sense. And Bob and Bill and Maddie and such have such connections and deep in depth of commitment to their self-styled executions over the years. But I think that's a place where opportunity can be tapped, and individuals and organizations and such can come together around a commonality of purpose that moves the needle.
Right. That all makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense.
Well, we're doing it. I mean,
If it's not fun, we're going home. That's our motto.
Yeah, I'm sure you're not doing it for your health. So I realize you're doing it because it makes sense. Yeah.
That's about us.
Yeah. So we think that.
Now, what does that really look like as a practical matter? I mean, when in terms of actual actionable steps?
Well, I think these documents.
I'm gonna go back to
will give you
sharing.
a really clear understanding. I mean, what we're talking about when, we all hear these words, inclusion and diversity and equity, and yet we have very few examples, as you just indicated. Yep. How does that work? And it really is about the understanding that's necessary to make these kinds of things real. One can hypothetically say anything, as we've witnessed recently.
Mm-hmm.
If people believe it, it's amazing, But it's another thing to offer something up that is tested and is part of an integral fabric in a community that is fed by the very thing that is necessary to have success, and that is by the individuals who make up the community.
Right.
That's what I think we have in the making here. This doesn't have to be, 10,000 people. This can be 100 people.
Mm-hmm.
This can be 50 people.
That's a good point.
It isn't a widely proposition. It's a quality proposition.
That's a really good point. Which makes it a little more manageable, I think.
And this, what I'm showing here is our opportunity zones prospectus that we've developed over time since we started engaging with the Phoenix Center in 2014.
Because they kind of define, and we'll send you a copy of this as well.
Yeah,
right.
we're going to
Right.
share with people who
Yeah.
can
I'll give you
roll
an
with
example.
it.
So the mayor was at the urban,
No, the Michigan Municipal League
Michigan Municipal League,
on opportunity
which has
zones.
become the vice president, so to speak, and
Yep.
so well met. She shows up with 3 slides, and we were there in the room, and we were the only ones in the room. Hell, we were one of the few of a handful that even attended the thing
I
virtually,
believe it, yeah.
and that surprised her. And she gave her 3 slides. The prospectus that we have is 48 slides.
Mhm.
Something that's
Who knows at
that's
this
got
point?
some depth to it. And by the way,
Right.
attracted $40 million
46.
worth of offer, 40,600,000 from an opportunity zone investor. In
Right. Yeah.
March of 2020. And we sat on that because you know, it's one thing to have a plan, and it's another thing to have enough smart people to carry off a plan.
Right. Very, very true.
So we sat.
I'll jump in there for a minute.
Yeah, what? Yes, Bob.
I don't want to rain on this. I think it's phenomenal, but it's hard for us locally to look at that as more than a misnomer, because we keep continuously going down rabbit holes that's not really bringing money in. It's making it look like money's coming in, but it's not monies that's doing the locals any good whatsoever. As far as the decision that's being made, they're not being made in the residents' best interest.
Yeah. It's a really important point, I think, because there is a sense of, well, hey, whenever we've seen investment come into Pontiac, there's certainly a widespread sense, and it's mostly true, that, well, that's not really benefiting us. The jobs aren't going to Pontiac residents, and in theory, you could build the tax base and provide better services, but that hasn't materialized, at least not in recent years. So I think people are wondering, well, wait a second, the mayor is constantly running around and touting projects and investment, but it's not helping me. It's not benefiting my life. And I think mostly people are right about that. And so I know you've thought a lot about this, Jim and Monica, so I'm sure you can speak to this.
Oh, you're absolutely right. And that was the sense of opportunity zone funding. It wasn't because the opportunity zones represented a situation that was dire. We all are aware of that. It was the fact that these funds would be used as community developed propositions, not real estate investments for somebody who wants to get capital gains reduction. And that's the basis of all opportunity zone funding, is capital gains reductions. But they must be put to work on behalf of the community. Otherwise, the community decides which and how those funds will be used. And there's the difference between what was just a kind of a boondoggle capital gains reserve for privileged people to something more dynamic in terms of the community. And this is, you know, it was allowed to be real estate investment around the first year or year and a half. And then it became clear that that wasn't working, just as Bob's pointed out. So in December, they recalculated how those funds will be used. And I'm pretty sure that the weakened proposition that is represented by this real estate investment purely is not going to meet the credibility that's necessary to move those funds. But it really begins with the inclusion of the community as the development proposition. It's why we're looking at OLSA as a partner in this. They have a venture fund, and they want to do things with the venture fund, but they're, again, not community oriented in a lot of cases, the real estate investments. And we've been having discussions with them around the opportunity zone funding model that their venture organization could utilize in the same fashion and in the same way that they're using opportunity zone funding as well. So there's a combination of focus there that goes to community. The community is the place in which you know, that the investment has to begin and has to manifest and has to value. And we hear about it all the time, talk about value, but very few people recognize what value is. They do the valuation in the return on their investment. And although that's, you know, an interesting concept, we have very few capitalism elements in a opportunity zone funded investment.
Right, right. That makes sense.
Jim, Jim,
Yes, sir.
I just want to ask you, the meeting that you was in where this discussion took place, you said it was only you there. Have any of these meetings that talk about finance and building prosperity for the city, have any of those meetings, anybody in those meetings ever asked, well, where are the key players, which are the residents or the community leaders? Have anybody ever asked that question in those meetings?
We do all the
We
time.
do all the time. We shared it. But it, you know, the mayor, it was her gig and they didn't promote it one bit.
Of course they didn't.
You know,
promote it.
coming from us, it's one thing, but you think your city would be doing it. That's what's the shocking thing. And they did not, none, there were no council members there. We ended up in a room with
A virtual room.
a virtual room for their showcase, and it was Dirt Realty. It was a representative Elliott something from Dirt Realty. And we know, Tim, you probably have to jump there too. So, but
Yeah.
it was Dirt Realty and the economic development director, Lynette, and Vern. Vern.
Gustafson and the mayor and the new finance.
And we ended up talking the whole time.
Yeah, the new finance director was in the room. The mayor left the room as soon as we were the only ones in the room.
Well, and
Well,
yeah, sorry, go ahead, Robert.
that's one of the things that concern me the most, is that what y'all are talking about has never hit the community. Like, the mayor was the only person at the JDC. Now, this every organization that she infiltrates for our supposed to be in our behalf. The communication is not getting to us that this is going on. So we're talking millions and millions of dollars over Oakland County as well as Pontiac that comes to Pontiac, but we never get the information until it's going away.
Right.
Right.
Well,
And that's what I'm working on now with the CDC, to try to investigate where we can pick up the slack at and get this information early rather than later. So with that, I'll sit back and relax it and listen. Thank you.
based on that strategy, I think we can formulate our own orchestration. I mean, OSHA's interested because they're a valued community contributor organization. And they weren't aware when we were initially talking to them that their investment, their venture organization, could be operating in the same way that opportunity zones are. But once they had thought about it, they understood it a little differently. So we had this grant that we were doing on behalf of the Phoenix Center, and very quickly that failed to materialize, and we won't describe why, but we know why. And we had said to them that following that grant, whether it became real or didn't, we would do it anyways. And they agreed that they would partner with us on doing that. And I think we have that in front of us right now. And we have ways in which we can use those dollars in a very productive fashion. So Bob, maybe we should get around the table here and discuss how you are going about your execution and what you're developing, and see if we're, can merge them into a dynamic that gets what you need on behalf of the community and gets ocean investment that is community driven.
I'm going to jump, but I do just want to say that this is a really important topic, and I think there's a sense, a short-sighted and wrong sense, I should say, but there's a view on the part of city officials or developers that somehow incorporating or soliciting community feedback is going to create problems or resistance or opposition. And I actually think it's more the opposite, frankly, that as people feel included and they're proactively reached out to, yeah, they might have some suggestions or some proposed changes, but they're going to have much more buy-in into what happens, and they're going to be overall more supportive. And I've personally seen that, and I think others in the community have too over time in Pontiac, that actually the right way to do it, if you're a developer or you're a city council person who supports the development, is communicate early and often with people, and they're much more likely to support the development.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And that's where most of the constructive elements over, let's say, 2018 to present are focused, just
Yep.
exactly as you just described. So we're in the right place at the right time, and we could be doing the right thing, but you can't do it without informed information,
Right.
exchange. Without those kinds of things taking place, you're throwing something at the wall and hoping it sticks.
Makes sense.
You really need that understanding. And we know you got to go.
Yeah, I'm sorry that I've got to run, but this was great as always. Let's try to do this again in the near future, maybe next week sometime. I don't know what your schedule's like, but I do want to talk about next steps in terms of how we get the word out in the community and how we put some pressure on the mayor and city council to, if this is going to move forward, and it may not, as you noted, Jim, and as I've thought, but if it's going to move forward, it's really imperative that they make it less bad.
Tim, before you leave,
Yeah.
I think that we all need to look at some legal ramifications about this setup, because citizen participation is not inclusive of this.
Right.
And council has made it somewhat impossible for people to really exercise their right to speak before council. And I've gotten that through the clerk. But also, those meetings that were held, the meeting that was held on a Saturday, I was told before the meeting that it was a closed meeting.
Mm-hmm.
When they come back and said some decisions were made, I know for a fact that that's a violation of the Open Meetings Act.
Yeah.
So when I went to and listened to the council meeting, Kermit made it a point to say they made some steps to make sure that it didn't violate the Open Meetings Act. But I hear y'all discussing this now, and there's still clearly violations of the Open Meetings Act that they didn't take if they allowed this to go through without this giving the information to the public on what's in those purchase documents or sales documents, as well as the agreement. And my people don't have, the neighborhood people do not have that agreement, nor have I personally seen the agreement between the public and private organizations that's supposed to be involved in this. I haven't seen any paperwork. That's why I praise you for your letter. And I would like to have signed off on that letter, because they should not move forward with this. It leaves us as a city vulnerable to another shutdown.
Well, that's a good point, Robert. And well, there are a lot of good points there. The Open Meetings Act is complicated, and I know I've got to run here, but it's only gotten more complicated with the COVID and virtual meetings. And so there were some amendments made to the Open Meetings Act that were passed by the legislature this past fall, and basically they allow the city mostly. There are some issues. There's some things the city council is doing that do violate certainly some technicalities of it. But broadly, the Open Meetings Act, during COVID at least, allows them to do what they're doing, which is to not allow direct public comment, but to say, if you email your comments in, we'll read them. And that is allowed, unfortunately. Now, one thing that you're raising that is a problem is they can't actually make a true decision, a binding decision in a closed meeting, because they can't vote in a closed meeting. Right. So they can discuss things, and they could, get a sense of consensus through that, right? but they can't actually act or decide formally or legally except through voting, and that can only happen in an open meeting. And so, you know, I think they've mostly done that, but I guess, I don't know, it's a fine line and it's hard to know exactly what happens in the closed meetings because they're closed to the public, obviously. But, you know, I think there'll be an opportunity too, Robert, or at least I think we should do this, to try to get co-signers onto the letter or some variation of the letter and do some public media around it. So I'm very supportive of that and would welcome that. And I know Mr. Maxey, I was hoping he'd be on the call this morning because I know that he's talked about maybe doing, you know, a press conference or something. I don't know if a press conference is the right format, but something to try to get the word out. So I think it's really important for us to talk about that.
And we'll work on that too. And we're happy to host conversations like this, but with a broader audience,
Yeah.
just
If-
this kind of
And
exchange.
Robert will send you the materials.
All right, I'm gonna jump off. See you, everyone.
All right.
Hey, Bob,
Bob, are you still here?
Yeah.
do we have those available?
We have that document available. I'll send it to you.
Okay. Yeah, I would like to have it. I'd like to have it, have some way of getting a hard copy, because
I'll send it. We extracted it from the larger city council document, so I'll send you a separate PDF.
So
Yeah.
the interesting thing about that is that when they voted to allow the mayor to sign on behalf of, they were only voting on what they had in front of them, the one pager.
Uh-huh.
And they never, ever voted again on the deal itself, as it then became 15 pages. And interesting, it's like, wow, guys, did nothing change from a one pager to 15 pages? You allowed her to sign on behalf of the one pager, that's fine. But the addended 15 pages, it was never discussed, nor was it in their brain to be able to vote on. And they never voted that I'm aware of. They never voted on those 15 pages, okay?
Well, that was my understanding when I was listening to the council meeting, and that they had an understanding of everything except for the change that they wanted to make. And that's what the letter was for, that one change. But as to all the information that, or discussion that they had regarding the agreement to purchase or sell it, none of that is available to us. So just the one page of the addendum is available, which does not describe what y'all discussed and what y'all are agreeing to. So
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's big ramifications there, which to me is really interesting. If I'm in city council, and I'm dealing with one of the bigger financial transactions ever, I would be wanting to know everything about it. I would want to have made my constituents aware of everything I know about it and everything that they might imagine that they know about it. And then from that, a consensus about what should be taking place on behalf of it. Instead, they just pushed it off. It's like it's too complex.
yeah, and that's what happened with the JDC and the Bloomfield, the village of Bloomfield property.
Yeah.
If I had not said anything to them about that brownfield project, they never would have known that Bloomfield would have been receiving their funds, but we wouldn't be receiving ours.
Wow.
And then once they dealt with that, they did not look at the rest of it because there was some agreements as far as jobs and that was concerned, that the development said, okay, we turned around and made an agreement that they could not honor that once the renters or landlords moved in. So it virtually took it away, gave it to us, and then took it away from us at the same time, but council never caught it. So, so it's just one example of the stupidity that is sitting on the council. If you're not serious, then you should not be on that council.
Right. Great point. Well, listen, have you accessed the mural? Are you okay with accessing the mural? Can you do that?
This
Yeah,
one,
yeah. When I keep going to it, it just goes to a still picture. So I don't know if I did something wrong or I haven't gotten to everything, but yeah.
Looks like a still picture, but it's not.
I send it to you again. Make sure you have this one exactly.
Okay. All right. Appreciate it.
Although it looks like a still picture, and I know you don't have a mouse, do you? You're not on a computer, you're on your phone?
Yeah, I just got my computer up and going.
Oh, yeah. Well,
So,
that'll make all the difference in the world. Because the mouse is what allows you to zoom in and out on the document.
okay.
And then you can double click on any of those documents and it'll take you to the document. In other words, you'll be in the PDF.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
You can't do that from a phone. I mean,
Right.
if you're really good, you can double click. But it doesn't work so well for zooming in and out. So Monica's going to show you where it is on the document here.
Yeah, let me give you a quick little overview now that you have the mouse to work with. So if you take and you find like white space here and you just click on it. There's Bill.
Hold on.
Hey Bill, we're on Tim had to great, how are you? Tim had to run, but we're still on here with Bob. I don't know how much longer he has, but we're just going over the mural. Can you jump on the Zoom?
Yeah, I thought you said 10 o'clock.
9 o'clock.
Oh, shit.
That's all right.
That's all right. You didn't miss anything.
You didn't miss much.
I thought you said you made a mistake at 9. I'm up here waiting for 10.
If you want to jump on the Zoom, we can go over what we talked about.
Oh, man.
Don't worry. We're okay.
Well, okay, I'll get on it.
It's nothing that we haven't talked about before.
We'll go over exactly what took place.
I'll go in short.
Okay.
Hold on, I'm trying to get it. I'm going to wait till 10 o'clock.
Okay, I called you too, but I gave you. Okay, okay. So Bob, if you so back to this, you click on the white space and that drags the mural around just by clicking on that and moving your mouse.
Okay.
So now when you scroll, I'm zooming in now. That's with your little wheel button, the scroll. So that zooms you in and out.
Okay.
So like moving it and zooming it are your two biggest moves that you can navigate the mural with.
Okay. Yeah.
And then there's on the top left corner, there's these mural mouse tips. So it gives you like a reminder. And then so then now I'm going to zoom out and I'm going to go over to where Jim said. I don't know what's going on with Bill. So what am I going to here?
These two documents.
Okay, so now I'm going down here and they're over in the bottom right corner.
You see these two red ones?
Okay.
The two red line here.
So now,
Are you getting on the Zoom, Bill? All right. Are you finding the Zoom link?
yeah,
No,
you-
I'm entering my email. And it says enter your password. So
Okay.
enter my email.
Okay.
I have to do it step
So,
step by step, because I'm already.
take your time. She's talking to Bob, so you have to.
I don't think he knows we're on the Zoom together.
I started tell you, hang up, get on the Zoom.
So double click.
Mm-hmm.
She's gonna double click in the box.
So then I get my mouse over here and I double click and it opens into a new window there.
Opens
So
up
now,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
so now you got a full PDF there.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of data on these things. I'm turning that off.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to him on the phone. I put it off speaker. I can't concentrate. Okay, so there's a lot of data in this mural, and the number one thing is just don't get overwhelmed with it.
Your password is his password.
For Alonzo Cali?
Yeah, Alonzo Cali at iCloud. Alonzo.
He should have a sticky note on by his chair. He's got sticky
You got
notes
a
on
sticky
it.
note by your
by
chair
his
that
chair.
says Alonzo Cali at iCloud.com. See, you see what this is all about, Bob? It's about community inclusion.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So once we get to the navigation, you know, like these are all design and digital innovation skills that our community desperately needs and already has, but they might not be connected to a platform that's really been developed for that purpose of developing an entrepreneurial economy, an informal economy, and an economy that you know includes everyone, those kind of things. So this platform's really been developed for that, and for us, we think that
We're now
the
just
most
going and
important
walking
thing
Bob through using
for
the
a
mural.
community to
Because he just got his
be
computer up.
included in is the planning process.
Right. Right. Absolutely.
As what we were discussing earlier. And then there comes the question, well, what good is the planning process we have, the status quo planning process or the more bureaucratic process, if it's not including community? So
Which computer
we've
is it?
developed a planning process that's also alignment with design thinking, which most corporations are trying to move to. It's just a more 21st century creative,
Which computer
innovative
are you using? Your iPad or your app?
platform. So it's very simple. You got your vision and your game plan. And then you've got this kind of process design journey that you can go on. And so, kids have a really fun time with this. Like they get really excited about, even just a question of what are our objectives? What are we going to do next? Kids are really engaged in it, and adults, of course, they need to be asking those questions, but it's also inclusive of kids as well, which we find is very helpful. And then over here in the left-hand corner, you got your sticky notes.
Look at the wall.
So you just click on the left panel and you can drag and drop. And then so that way, like say you read this PDF and you have a really good idea about how to make it more real, because these PDFs don't mean anything if they're just sitting in our emails or in this mural. They have to be activated in some fashion, and we can't do all that. We can have some ideas about particular things like the Phoenix Center, but making that Phoenix Center more community inclusive and allowing a new economy to spring forth from the Phoenix Center, that's not be that's not something we can do. We can, we're going to need help. So that's where the sticky notes come through, because every person in the community is going to have intelligence to contribute to the whole. So that's just why that's why we use this platform. And, as it gets more, as the Phoenix Center becomes more real, And the holes in it are punched because of the shallowness of the deal.
Are you telling
Um,
me?
This kind of platform can be more powerful. And I think with your CDC,
Mm-hmm.
we should be thinking maybe
Yeah.
about how to use the platform, and you play around with it and get familiar with it. And we can host a series, we can do all kinds of things, however you think, to include and inform the community in these conversations.
Yeah, well, that'll work. Yeah, I like that.
Okay,
See,
good.
You see, Bob,
Sorry,
from
that's a little
where we're coming
distracting.
from is
Yeah.
this capacity allows the community to build their own future. This is one thing about, if I'm in corporate America, I'm looking for this that thing that we've created. The reason I'm looking for it is I have a lot of complex data that I have to break down and communicate to other people in my organization. But you know what? If I'm just using text, an email, a Zoom call, if I'm just using documents, we're not going to get a goddamn thing done.
Right.
Right. When it becomes visual, if you look at the graphics here, that the brain does all kinds of magical things about ordering things. It gives you a visual map to progress, and the brain interprets all of that simultaneously. So that as we begin to work through a problem, it becomes understood by the number of people or the amount of people that are involved in the conversation. That can be anywhere from 5 to 500 or 5,000. It doesn't matter.
Right.
Because as this thing goes along, it gets to harder questions and harder questions and harder questions. So it isn't like 500 people have the same understanding of what's going on in the world. Work gets done.
Yeah.
Communities can get built in ways that no one else can understand, because this isn't the way they work.
Right. Right.
So we're offering this to the community because of the value that represents to the community. And we'd love to be out in corporate America doing this. I can't think of anything more boring.
Yeah, and also it lends to people not necessarily having to gather to do it. They can be at home.
No, so we have a really wonderful environment right now for the spread. And if we start it out simply and allow it its own course, in other words, it's not up to us to develop, it's up to the community to develop it.
Right, right.
It is a sense of how we all went to kindergarten. Then we went to first grade. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's how it goes.
And they said, sit down and shut the hell up.
Yeah, exactly. We'll tell you everything you need to know. It hadn't worked out so well. So this is where that wonderful intuition and imagination and creativity come into play. And the wonderful thing about that is those things know no zip code.
Right, right.
And there's magic in this city. And for it not to be recognized or found is an insult, okay? And this is the way we find it. This, the kids are the best indicator of how vibrant imagination and creativity in this city is. And every time we engage with young people, our minds get toasted. I'm telling you, it's so obvious that the brilliance and imagination and creativity held hostage in our classrooms, in our schools. It's an abomination, okay? These kids are rich with intellect, rich with insight, rich with imagination, rich with creativity. And when they get in those closed environments,
Mhm.
you aren't capable, or you aren't, or you name it, you aren't, okay?
That's right. That's
As
right.
opposed to just the freedom to use their God-given talents and gifts. I mean, it's an abomination, is what I call it, and that's not a castigation against individuals or teachers or administrators. The task that they have is huge. We all recognize that, but the charge that they have is to allow these young people to become the best that they can be, and instead they meet them with all these limitations, and preconceived understandings that aren't accurate. Okay, and it's unfortunate.
And you're absolutely right.
Well, when we work with kids in these tools, it's off the charts.
Yeah, it's so much fun. And it's like, working with the people who are there paid to teach them, it's like not fun.
No, because they like put them in a box.
Right,
Exactly.
right.
Exactly.
And that's where I had a problem. And even my daughter, she went to West Bloomfield School.
Yeah,
And I had two particular teachers I had to chastise because they wanted to make her a school pet. I said, nope.
wow.
Wow.
I said, treat her like everybody else and make sure that she is focused on her work and not your compliments. I
Right,
don't
you're
want you
you're paying
complimenting my
head.
daughter. so, so yeah.
Wow,
This
that's powerful.
this COVID has had all kinds of implications, but one of the implications that it's had is it's advanced, because people were forced to use technology. It's advanced technology by like a decade.
Absolutely.
And one of the things that it has accomplished is it has outed education. The very thing that we're talking about has been outed because the parents now have seen through the virtual and remote learning what's being offered in their school buildings. And they're going, oh my God. I was getting this same thing in school. And so education has been outed. And for that, we can look at COVID as have been, I hate to say this, a blessing in a sense, because you can't ever go back. And I've been in technology for 40 years. Once you're in technology and it's out there, you can't get the genie back in the bottle, okay?
That's so true.
And education's been outed. And so we're going to get this tremendous change. I mean, if I can be anywhere and get and receive learning, I can be anywhere and get and receive learning. It no longer has to be in a fashion that we recognize in terms of I have to show up at the schoolhouse every day at 7:30 and I don't leave until 3, and therefore all my learning takes place in that window.
Right.
Like you were saying earlier too, the power in this is we don't have to physically be together around the planning process too. It's like all of these things that if we do technology in the right way, not just try to transfer the old way we were doing it to technology, which is a farce, but if we do actually new things, which is inclusion and innovation and community development and creativity, then we've got something fun and more people can access it than they could before.
You can access it 365, 24/7.
24/7.
Well, that was what I was referring to. Some of you like me. Once I start concentrating on something, I don't like somebody breaking my concentration. So with all the running around and whatnot, my time early in the morning or late at night, that's when my juices start running. So I can go to it and get those ideas that just won't come when I know I got an appointment to be somewhere.
That's right.
Right,
That's right.
right.
And that goes along to everybody in the community. Hey, a lot of them might have time in the afternoon where that's where their juices flow, so they can go in the afternoon. So, yeah, it leaves it open to everybody at a different time.
Without a doubt.
Yeah, and that's why creativity, that's why it works well with creativity, because everybody's creative, as you were discussing yours. Everyone's creative process is different.
Right, right. But yeah.
Well, let's do this. Why don't you see if you can access those documents? One of them is about cities and kids' rights in a city. And the other one is about platforms, more about digital things that we should be aware of as a community, and see how we can fashion them and use them to create community value.
Okay, I sure will.
And your insights about that and how that may fit, or how we might develop something around them is some fodder for the next conversation.
Yeah. All right, well, let's do that. Yeah.
Okay. And you know, you can leave a sticky note on the mural,
Mm-hmm.
and that way we can know about what your thoughts might be and so forth and so on. And the amazing thing is if we're a group of people and we're all leaving sticky notes, those all produce new ways of thinking about things. And all of a sudden I have even more sticky, you know what I'm saying? It just,
There you go.
combinational thing that just continues to expand.
Uh-huh. Well, yeah, I'll do that.
All right.
All right.
I'll certainly do that.
And please feel free to call me if you need any technical, help with the mural. I know it's a bit of a learning curve at first. I remember when I first started with it, I said, what's going on here? I don't know. But I've been doing it for so long now, it's second nature. So please let me know if you run into any bumps or anything. I'm happy to help.
I sure will, because I'm just catching up. I'm trying to catch up.
Yes.
But y'all drive the car, and I'm in an old truck. Oh, well, I will catch up with you. Maybe going down the hill, but I'll catch up with you.
All right, good.
All right.
Sounds like a plan.
I will talk.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Well, I guess Bill decided not to get on, huh?
I
Yeah,
guess
he's
not.
having-
He
he's
was
having-
having problems with it, but we'll do another meeting next week as Tim.
Okay,
We'll be
that'll be wonderful.
And we'll get to that PDF on the things for the city council, on the deal.
on the deal
global
too.
settlement deal.
Yeah, and I
All
put you on our mailing list. We're sending out a newsletter today too, so we'll be sending that too.
right. Thank you so much.
Okay, Bob, we'll talk
And
to you later.
All right. Have a great day.
Okay,
All right,
you
peace,
too.
you too.
Peace.
Bye-bye.